Hi, testing. We're good? Are we rolling?
Yeah.
Richard, tell us about the Chris Roberts games you've played and about being a Chris Roberts fan.
The first one I played was Wing Commander 2 back in, that would have been about 1992, back when it came out.
I have been a Chris Roberts fan ever since my dad brought home a copy of Starlancer, and I found the copy, and, well, he had to take it away from me eventually.
What do you think about Chris Roberts bringing back PC gaming?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, for a PC gamer, this is at the very least a renaissance for us. And seeing Chris Roberts come back from the movie industry is like, this is going to get better and better and better for us.
Okay, we have 5 minutes and counting till Chris Roberts' announcement. And are we all excited here? We've all got our golden tickets. Yeah!
Please welcome to the stage, Chris Roberts.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to build a universe. I'm going to do a PC game like the old Wing Commanders I did, which was if you've got a great PC, this is really going to show it off. You're not going to be able to get this experience anywhere else. I'm hoping that a lot of you want to be in this universe, because I do, and I want to play this game. So I'm going to jump into the game now. Have some questions.
The maneuvering thrusters, can they be intentionally disabled to do like some of the Starbucks style maneuvers?
There will be lots of moves and strategies in terms of how you dogfight.
I got you, Montoya. Thank you so much. Welcome to Soul Citizens. Montoya. Thank you so much. Welcome to Soul Citizens. Thank you so much. Awesome. Fastcart, tell us a little bit about you. Awesome. Fastcart, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, I'm fastcart, also known as FC, a member of TEST Squadron, and I'm moderator for different other streamers. Sometimes I'm on the base radio, sometimes I'm on the Astro Pub, Captain Table, and I'm also have a set on Miss Hart's 80s show on Tuesday on the base radio. And I've been playing Star Citizen back in 2014 after CitizenCon.
Awesome. Next to you, Gigi. Tell us a little bit about you. Next to you, Gigi. Tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, I'm Gigi. I got into Star Citizen about, I want to say, a year ago. So I'm pretty new to the game, but I do love it right as of right now. It's very fun. I'm a cook by trade, and just a green-eyed gal living the life.
Awesome. And last but not least, TenthSigma. Last but not least, Tenth.
Yeah. So I'm TenthSigma. I backed the project in November of 2014, so probably near the anniversary sale, if I remember that correctly. I am a unashamed Origin ship lover, and I really love the project as well. I'm an accountant by trade, and so I'm very interested in the accounting app coming out soon, TM. But I love the project and love meeting people in the community. So it's been a lot of fun.
That is awesome. Well, we're not going to waste a lot of time. You guys saw we opened up with the teaser trailer. Hey, Funky Monkey. Thanks for following. We opened up with the teaser trailer showing back in the day when there were just a few people who knew about Star Citizen. And, man, envious of those people who had golden tickets. Do you guys remember what golden tickets were? That's a throwback.
No.
Fastcart might remember what the golden ticket was.
I
I didn't get one. But I remember.
You didn't get one. Oh wow, I didn't. Oh, I didn't talk about me. Yeah, I got into Star Citizen as an Eve player. I was a Star Wars Galaxies player. Then I went to Eve because there was nothing else out there. And then a friend of mine, Sinistry, you know who you are. Sinistry was the one who told me about Star Citizen. Actually, I should blame her because I'm a lot less money in my pocket because of her. But anyway, I ended up getting into Star Citizen. I think I watched it a little bit at the end of 2012, beginning of 2013, and by late 2013, I think I was at that point signing up and jumping in. So I guess maybe I'm the oldest person in it. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. Fastcart, have you been in longer than me, or am I longer than you?
I'm 2014.
Okay, so I got you beat by a few months then, maybe. Okay, cool. All right, awesome.
October 2014.
Okay, so the two old guys are really the two old guys, basically, is what it comes down to. All right, cool. All right, so anyway, we're not going to waste time because this video is about an hour long. For those of you who've never seen it, I think you'll really enjoy it, and we're going to jump right into GDC.
It went by 10 seconds before someone commented on the graphic now and then. It is amazing to see how much the graphics have changed since that time. What do you think, Tim? 3 ships against that ship? What do you think? Even ship, even odds?
They're gonna need more than that.
They're gonna need way more than that.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, for those of you who are familiar with Chris's Wing Commander, you can see a lot of imagery from the Wing Commander games reflected here a couple decades later. He's still obviously influenced by Star Wars, and bits of Wing Commander still here.
This is one of the parts that was one of the coolest parts. Like when they start gearing up,
yeah,
to combat the assailants. Like that's always like in any movie or any like video. Whenever you see people like gear up like that, it's always like really hype. So
yeah, it really is.
It's one of the cool things.
I did like the way the panels came out when they got into
like this right here. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah, but look at how rudimentary everything is. You know, the detail's not there. You know,
Yeah.
They're just panels, and that's it. That Bengal carrier looks good no matter what, though.
it does look sort of Mario Kart-ish, so.
Now, chat might need to help me out on this one, or our colleagues here. These are sites that are sailing the Bengal right now?
Yeah, I think so. I think what was funny is that people probably didn't think this was all in-game engine. You know, they probably figured it was just a cinematic back then.
I'm not gonna lie, I would have.
Please welcome to the stage, Chris Roberts.
Good morning, everyone. It's probably a bit early for all us game developer style people, but I'm glad you got out here early. I hope you like what you saw. That I'm actually pretty proud of it.
Chris Roberts with no gray hair.
In the game engine,
Yeah,
or very little.
the game asset. So that was the sort of
And
thing
probably a
we
few
did
less
with
pounds now that I'm
pre-rendered
thinking about it.
sequences, and not that long ago when I did the Wing Commander movie, we had to have millions of dollars of SGI machines
Stress
to do that.
eating.
Oh yeah.
On a PC with a GTX 670 in real time, which is
A GTX 670, guys.
That was so amazing when I heard that.
The game engine a little later on, and I'm going to sort of show you some stuff in it and show you some stuff that I think is pretty cool.
It wasn't even on a 970. Oh my God.
Before then, I thought I would have a little conversation with you and tell you why I'm coming back, kind of why I took a little bit of a break, and I'll sort of tell you the big picture of the game that this past year I've been in.
Did you guys see Montoya's comment down there?
Pre-production and prototyping, which is what you've seen here, and sort of tell you about kind of what I'm planning to build, and hopefully invite you guys to be part of that process going forward. So let me get my super handy clicker here to move this on. So I think you guys know that when I sold Digital Anvil to Microsoft back in the very beginning of 2001.
Sorry about the broken link in there, guys.
From the game business.
I'll put it in.
Thanks, buddy.
There was several reasons, but one of the big ones was that I was sort of frustrated with the technology of being able to realize sort of the picture of the vision I had in my head. And then also there was the ever-increasing development cycle. So most of the Wing Commanders I made I built in about a year or 18 months. But Freelancer, we were sort of 4 years into production, and Microsoft bought the company, and it was still another 2 years before it came out. So sort of 6 years between releasing and people getting to play the game that you've been working on sort of was feeling too long, and I was fairly frustrated with that.
Kind of reminds me of James Cameron when he said he wanted to make Avatar, but he waited because the technology wasn't there to do it.
More about being part of a big company
and Battle Angel Alita too.
Yeah.
Games, and so I sort of felt like I wanted to take a break, but it didn't mean that I didn't love games. And actually, the interesting thing is I probably got to play a lot more games when I stopped making them because I had some more spare time. So I've always been playing games. I've always had the newest PC with the newest graphics card and the whatever the new console is. A couple of years ago was sort of the first time that I was playing games and feeling like I actually have something to say again, and I'd like to come back and make a game. And I sort of felt playing it on a couple of things. One, I sort of felt like the technology had moved forward to a point, and also I could see where it was going to go, that you could do stuff in terms of the visual fidelity that would just increase the immersion. And so for me, all the games I've ever built are always about creating a world.
Two buzzwords in one sentence.
Texture, and to do that, you have to sort of realize it with a fair amount of detail. And I think today, especially if you're focusing on a high-end PC, which I'm doing, you can sort of do that to a level that just sort of sucks you into the world. And I think that's actually one of the things when I was doing films, I sort of, you sort of learn is that there's a huge attention to detail, right? So even a film set in today's world, half the time you think those were shot on real locations, but usually they were actually sets that were built, and they have a whole art department, and they've got people that figuring out how to put the little scratches, the ticks, little rivets on the walls and everything, just down to the finest details. So when you watch it, you think it's real and you get sucked into it. And I think that's something that when you're building a world or a game, the more of that you have into it, I think it helps. I mean, I definitely, one of the games that I liked a lot a few years ago was Uncharted 2, and I think they did a great job. It wasn't so much that the gameplay itself was wholly original, because it's sort of an evolution of Tomb Raider and a third cover shooter, but the texture of it, and the world, and the detail, I was completely immersed in. And so at that point, I was lost, and it was great. And so the technology being able to let you do that now is sort of, I think, one of the big reasons. And the other reason for me that I'm sort of excited to come back and make games again is I sort of feel like, with the shift to digital and the way that you can sort of be connected to your community of people that are playing the games that you make, I think that's incredibly exciting. I mean, I think I was saying one of my frustrations in the old days was that you'd work for many years on a game, and then you would put it on a disc, and then it would go in a box, and it would go out to the store, and then people would buy it, and hopefully they liked it, and then it would all be over after a month, and then you would start it all over again, and there'll be another 2-3 years before you would get to do that again. And that, if you're a creative person, that's kind of gets frustrating, especially the longer it gets. And I think in today's world, when you sort of can be connected and you can sort of build a world that maybe people are playing all the time, there's constant updates, that it's a totally different equation. And I think that you have much more instant feedback. And I think from my standpoint, anyway, I think it's incredibly exciting, and it's kind of fun. I mean, I don't know how many of the people in here went on the sort of early teaser site that we put up about 30 days ago, but even on that site, we have been doing 2 to 3 content updates a day. And it's kind of fun. You're sort of doing it live, and you're seeing what people are saying when you put stuff up. And I really sort of feel like that's something that is fun and would be great to explore going forward. And so that was one of the sort of core tenets of me saying, hey, I want to come back and I want to do something to that direction. So here we go. Press my little button. So what am I going to build? So I'm going to build a universe, and the sort of name of the universe, or the community I'm talking about is going to be called STAR CITIZEN.
It's 2012.
Make fun of the man's PowerPoint, okay?
In this universe. You don't automatically get it. You have to earn it, so you can earn it.
He was a one-man studio back then.
Sort of cinematic teaser that we just showed is from the sort of military side of it, or you could earn it by performing missions that would increase your civic standing.
He's his own Red One.
An entrepreneur and earn a lot of money and buy your citizenship. And of course, in this universe, you don't necessarily have to be a citizen. In fact, if you were a pirate or sort of on the sort of grayer side of law and order, you may not want to be a citizen. But the idea is that there's sort of something that you can attain and work towards. And also, I like the idea of citizenship, because I sort of feel like one of the things I want to do with this game is I want to say, hey, you know what?
There go the hands.
PC games are cool. Space games are cool.
I
think it's kind of a community, and I
definitely sitting on my hands right now, because I talk with my hands, and I am sitting on them.
Fan community, and I sort of feel like
so that I don't.
I sort of want to pull the community together.
But yeah, he started with the hand right off the bat.
Build a great universe and have that ongoing sort of relationship, and people will be citizens of this universe. It'll be hopefully very cool. But the base gameplay in Star Citizen is it's going to be the style of game that I've built in the past, which is sort of space combat and adventuring in a persistent open universe. So the way I'm looking at it is I sort of want to make one holistic universe that encompasses everything that was great about Privateer and Freelancer, but also what works with that was great about Wing Commander. And so I want you to be able to sort of experience all those things. So it's sort of like you're in a universe that doesn't stop going forward and happening, and is a sort of constantly live. But you want to play your single player story campaign off on the side, you can absolutely do it. So sort of the idea is in this universe, for instance, you can sign up for your military duty, which is one of the ways to earn citizenship, and that in essence is playing the single player story narrative campaign that's the Wing Commander experience, and that's the typical branching mission setup that you would have in Wing Commander, because of course if you're in the military you can't just sort of take off and fly off to another planet. It's like you'd be going AWOL. But the idea is that particular experience we're calling Squadron 42, which was sort of what that cinematic trailer was about. And you know, the 42nd Squadron of the Imperial Navy in this universe is sort of a legendary fighting unit. It's very much like the French Foreign Legion, in fact, that it's always in the toughest areas, you know, trying to hold back the sort of alien hordes that are threatening humanity, and they, you know, somehow manage to pull out in, you know, against all the odds. And to actually be accepted into this squadron is a pretty huge deal, and sort of gives you a sort of certain level of I don't know, status. It would be like being a Navy SEAL or something. So the goal of the narrative campaign is that you fight the battles very much in a sort of Wing Commander 1, Wing Commander 2 narrative branching style. And then if you manage to succeed at the end, you'll be invited into the squadron. And then when you finish that, you'll be able to muster out. You'll have some credits in your pocket, and you'll sort of have the status of being you know, an ex-member of the 42nd Squadron, and there's a sort of community of sort of ex-members in the universe, and you know, then you go out and make your fortune in the universe, and you know, we'll do another story campaign in a little bit, just much like the Wing Commander mission pack.
It's amazing how much has written and changed in the past 8 years.
And then so you have that, which is sort of the Wing Commander experience, and then you have sort of the Privateer Freelancer experience, which is the typical, you can fly around, venture, you know, buy goods, sell it, trade, be a merchant, be a pirate, be a mercenary. It's sort of up to you. And you know, obviously the goal in that is to sort of build up.
How many games were promising that in the day?
Use capabilities. So you know, eventually there'll be some real estate that you'll be able to buy. But essentially, that's hopefully going to be an ongoing.
Yeah, you didn't get your plot for $50 or $100.
Adapting, and so
I did. I passed that land beacon sale, man. I'm waiting for it to come back.
Squadron 42?
I think there are a lot of people that kind of regret that they didn't grab at least the small one.
So one of the keys, and
there's plenty of land.
About it in, you know, back when we were doing Freelancer, was that
I really wanted that penthouse
sort of
in Microtech.
Right.
You know, I talked about it when we first announced the game in 1999. And unfortunately,
I'll go for one in Terra. I'll wait.
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
Sort of that was stage 2, and you know, it was released in 2003.
I'm a modern girl. Give me all the skylights and floor-to-ceiling windows and marble floors. I'm for it. Yes.
So I've always wanted to feel like
Here's something interesting. Look at the features up top. We talked about private servers. Back then, they used to talk about private servers where it'd be available for players to set up their own servers for the game.
But it's not the style of game that, you know, the first-person sort of visceral Wing Commander, Privateer, Freelancer style. So that's really important. The other aspect of it is not just a sort of dynamic economy, but it's also to have a universe that sort of reacts to what's happening, you know, what the player base is doing out there. So there's several ways that we're going to achieve it. One of the key ways is that we're going to do sort of micro content updates. So one of the core goals of this universe is not to have a big sort of monolithic content update every 1 year or 2 years, like you see in sort of some of the bigger MMOs.
Fastcart, you didn't watch Space 1999?
Once a week or once every 2 weeks. Adding things. So like
I watched.
You know, 1 week you may add a
Space
Star
Above and
System,
Beyond.
a couple of weeks later you'll
Anyone remember that one?
5 missions.
I remember.
Path over on
I feel like a baby because I haven't seen almost anything being talked about in the chat.
Doing that, and you're sort of,
stopped at Battlestar Galactica, picked back up at the Expanse, and that was
you
it.
have an overall goal of where you go.
If you want to see some recent, start with the Expanse. Just don't go on. Firefly.
I think I only watched like the first episode.
So it's sort of
before that I watched the 100, but that was
like their actions actually have some impact. You know, or another way to think about it is if you think about the TV model versus the film model. So you know, I think that the sort of open world style of game is closer to a TV model than a film model. And that, what I mean is, you know, if someone does a TV series, what they do is they write a Bible and
you
they
haven't
write 5
seen
or 6 episodes.
The rest of the Expanse?
Yeah, and you haven't seen Space 1999. It's a pipe down. Mine was first. Touche.
Shows, a lot of times you'll see characters get killed off or some characters get bigger roles. That's kind of what you can do in TV that you say can't do in features, because you're sort of live with what's happening. And I think that also can be very applicable to sort of an open world and a universe that I'm trying to build. And I think it could be really great. And to give an example of, say, something else that would be connecting for the people playing this universe, so I mentioned that we would have a star system that would put in the galaxy. Well, we want to actually tell the player base that we put a new jump point, a new star system in. In fact, it would have to be a player that's playing it would have to discover it. So it basically would be an uncharted jump point. And if you've got certain equipment on your ship, or you tend to be someone that wants to be more an
Funky, if
explorer,
that happened, people would never go back to work.
You would be flying near a star, and you would sort of see that there would be this sort of gravitational anomaly. And you'd realize it's an uncharted jump point, and then you could choose to actually chart and fly the jump point, which is difficult.
This is good that he talks about this, because people have had mixed ideas about what it meant to go through a wormhole or a jump point, and people didn't realize there are some jump points that have gates, and then there are other ones that are the random points that open up that you have to dangerously navigate.
And then you can sell it at a great profit back to one of the space corporations that would then just be able to sell it.
See, but that's the cool part, right? Where you have the adventuring part where you find the wormhole, but then you also have the economy part, where your system tracks that, you can sell it to corporations, and so there's this cool. That's what attracted me to the game, was there's this business element to it, or economic element to it, where you could essentially, because I played Eve.2 Griff, and I just sat in Vita most days and
those aspects I think are
just transacted
really interesting
stuff there, and that was a lot of fun for me. So doing that for
is important
in Star System was awesome. These two things built together.
Really,
I leveled up the skills, so I don't have to be in Vita. I can do it 2 systems or 3 systems away.
Oh man, you were one of those. Fastcart, man, I wasn't ready yet. I wasn't on
the single player offline. Single player, you don't have to be online for it. But if you do play it online, your friends can jump in and essentially sort of be wingmen during missions. And I don't know if many people here have played
I had 5 accounts. One with a marketeer, 2 miners, a couple of haulers.
Single player / multiplayer. And when you went to take out one of the bosses, people could help you out and join you in, and they would get some bonus and points for it. But we'll definitely sort of have a really cool multiplayer on the sort of campaign narrative side. And then in the open world, we're sort of focusing a lot on how you and your friends can fly together. And so like an example would be, if you're flying from one planet to another planet and you get attacked along the way, you get sort of put out into what we call a battle instance. And in this battle instance,
yeah, they still do pop a doc. There is a drone room. Their drones aren't there yet. Similar ships like the Vulcan and other ones use drones. So does the Reclaimer. They haven't gotten that tech done yet, but there is a drone room on the Garrick.
If you ever play World of Tanks or Battlefield, if you get online and you see your friends playing in an instance, you can jump into it, but sometimes they're all full up. Well, what we're saying is we're building it in such a way that we'll always reserve slots for friends so they can come in. And then on top of that, what we're going to do is, and I'll show you when I'll get into it, I'll show you some of the technology, but we've spent a lot of time building a technology so it's sort of scalable on a spaceship size. So we can
You're right, Miss Hartz.
Spaceships like a fighter craft that you're flying, but we can also handle much bigger spaceships. So in that trailer you're seeing that you're flying off a big carrier. Well, that's simulated and modeled as a vehicle just like the fighters are, and we can be anywhere in between that. So in this sort of open world universe, you'll be able to sort of buy or fly around a bigger ship. So think a Millennium Falcon style ship where you can have, you'll have the cockpit and you'll have some turrets and some corridors inside it, and you could be flying it, and you can have a few of your friends hanging out on your ship as you're flying through the galaxy.
That must be coming through.
You can say, hey, we're going to fly on a difficult mission. Will you man the turrets for me? And a few of the bigger ones will even have a small hangar bay that will have a fighter in. So if you come under attack, someone could jump in the fighter.
I think a lot of people are looking at the Millennium Falcon,
always something I've wanted to do.
The equivalent in the game in the Star Runner. At least the people I've talked to, they're really excited for it.
So those are all features I think are pretty
for
cool.
Different reasons.
Yeah.
Cockpit.
It shifted to that because originally, if you remember, it was the Connie.
So I'm going to jump into the
People
game
started
now,
looking at the asymmetrical design on the other one, like you said.
prototype
So
level that
I try not to even compare stuff to Star Wars. I just because I look at it as just influences, but those ships are so different to me.
And then it's like for Firefly, any ship can be the Serenity.
Yeah.
Freelancer, the Carrack, anything, almost anything you want, someone will think it would remind them of Firefly.
Yep.
That's pretty much the come to. You see that in the Squadron 42 demo.
Yeah.
Actually on the bridge of that carrier. And,
So this is Chris actually walking through what was the pre-recorded thing, but he's using the engine.
Fell down too many stairs.
And he said it took them a year to get through that.
Really?
You see out onto the actual main carrier there.
I would love
But
to
I'm gonna,
say how much my stomach just dropped when you
cheat
fell through
and-
that. Like everything
So here
in my
I'm sort of on
stomach
the
just
hangar
went
bay,
whoosh,
so
like I was
one
on a
of the
roller
things
coaster.
that is, I'm kind of happiest with the sort of level of fidelity that we're doing here.
Well, if we're playing Buzzword Bingo, that's amazing for you.
So so my pilot character here, so he's built out of about 100,000 faces. So a typical current gen console game will have about 10,000 faces for a main character. The difference you get with this is you get all this extra sort of.
Montoya said he meant to go to the bridge, but he fell down the stairs.
You wouldn't be able to get in, a current gen style game. And then also, if I'm looking around in the, here in the hangar bay, the level
Yeah, that's
of
true, Ops
detail-
Chief.
Prototype was still working, but you're looking around here in the level of detail.
Can you
but
change the
actual,
title to
hangar
Oh,
itself is
shoot,
about,
thank you, man.
Just under about 2 million polys, and each one of these ships themselves, if we go take a look at them, I'll get into one to fly. They're about 300,000. So the ships, that's again about 10x what you have in a current gen.
Thanks, buddy.
Console game, and it just allows you to have a lot
music
more
escape?
detail. Sort of the paneling.
I'm getting
and
there.
stuff, and it all holds up really close. But I'm going to go and get into my fighter. Start in. And it wouldn't be. Got to have a cockpit. It's got to be real. It's got to be detailed. So this is kind of what I'm talking about.
It's
the
gotta
level
be
of immersion.
detailed.
I mean, I think I.
If we only knew.
Kind of
He had no idea even then, like what he was really gonna come up with.
Get them all done. But,
Yeah, look at all the detail in those 4 monitors up top. Just a green screen.
I'll get out and sort of.
But I do like the way he's punching and everything.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
Those
cool.
animations are cool.
Try not to kill ourselves.
I mean, if it took them a year to get this working.
Again, so like
There is
so
absolutely
I was
no
walking around
way
this
I would
cockpit,
have made it out of
which is-
there.
actually, I'll go here.
I would have slammed into everything possible.
Normally play it this time.
Left,
You gotta
right.
go straight ahead.
Listen,
Again, it's
listen
exactly
to me,
the same.
okay?
About the
No,
level of
it would
fidelity.
not
So,
have happened.
the ship itself.
Do we even have repair facilities on the bingo
bridge
at
there
this
is
point?
like
Like,
that,
you just
it's
turn the ship around and just bring it back in.
Just
because
go
at
back.
That point, it's
Yeah.
not going. It's coming
Just go
back.
Focus in it on that. It's kind of hard. I don't want. Oops, I'm gonna hit this side. That probably won't be so good. But the idea, I mean, like the idea would be in the multiplayer side, you literally could be sitting.
What
in
is
that
he
bridge
using
and
to turn his
friendly
head
to
and
get out
just,
in
you
a
know?
fighter and fly around? And
Same way
could
you
wait
do it
for each
now?
other. And
I would
it's all
assume.
done at that level. So if you sort of notice, there wasn't any loading screen. It all holds up. I'm there in first person.
I don't believe they
third
had
person
track IR
at that
in
level of
games
fidelity,
like
and
that.
then I get into my cockpit, and I've got let's find some.
Then again, he's in developer mode, so.
Space, so there's light, but so yeah, like I'm in my cockpit. So if you think,
Oh, the joystick is moving around, reminiscent to
Oh yeah.
Wing Commander.
Wing Commander, yep.
the pedals,
Even the feet and the pedals are moving. How about that?
foot on the
In his luminescent
throttle.
spacesuit.
I was
and if I'm
just gonna say
changing
with
something
his
around, you see my thumb. So every action that you're going to do in the final
turquoise
game,
lit
you'll actually do. You
spacesuit.
see your character flips the switch. You want to turn on it. You want to turn the weapons display on. You'll have to switch. Your character will actually have to switch, and it will come out. So it's all about making you feel immersive. It's sort of like the next step of what a long time ago I did in Wing Commander, where I put you in the cockpit, and instead of saying you were 52% damaged, it was like you would see the cockpit smoking, you would feel that. But of course, that was much more primitive. It was VGA 320 by 200. This is 1080p with millions of colors. But it's part of it's the level of detail and immersion. If I sort of come out on the ship itself, it's the same. It's like just like little things, so like silly things. But if I'm like moving my laser Gatlings around, the wires are all deforming, and if I'm flying, you'll sort of see my vectored thrust on the back it's all sort of moving. And let's see if I go here, shows a few things. But the idea is, this like all the craft that you fly are modeled to this sort of level of fidelity. So this particular fighter has about 300 parts.
Hey, welcome, Gladestone.
60 plus of them are all sort of moving.
You said fidelity, Frank.
You guys have to tell Gigi about that.
Oh, they've made a whole bingo or drinking game or whatever you want kind of game out of like certain buzzwords that get said during presentations. So there are some presentations where you get like liver alcohol poisoning, and some
they're actually all very much like a real missile would be. So there's an explosive force, and they go out, and then it sort of hits the acceleration. But it's all sort of the aspect of sort of the realism. I mean, same thing.
This is the starter, right? Okay.
It's like a level of detail that typically you haven't sort of seen before in at least definitely a console game. It's what you can do on a high-end PC. But let's see if I'll get in closer. Fly a little bit. So yeah, I mean, it's just if you want to come in right up really close, it's going to hold up all the way in really close, and then if you want to come out wide, I mean, it's the same thing, and the same on the carrier. The carrier itself was, I think the carrier itself is about 7 million polys, where this is about 300,000. So it's just all, that's all what you can do when you're sort of.
Oh yeah, you said 7 million polys. I want to compare that to what it is now.
Worrying about fitting inside
I don't know the actual numbers for now.
Megabytes and working on 7-year-old technology. So one of the things that I'm kind of like most excited by is the way we're doing the flight model and the sort of physics simulation here. So so just to show you, so like here's my ship, and it's modeled. It's a complete, proper, full rigid body physical simulation, and actually it rotates and it moves and maneuvers around, changes orientation, all like a real spaceship would do. So I know it looks like it's got wings, but basically what's happening is force. Like so, here I'm yawing. You can see the thrusters, the vector thrusters, are all sort of articulating and actually generating forces in that direction. So if I'm going to pitch, you'll see them pitching and rolling and doing all that stuff. Same if I'm like rolling, you'll see the thrust. And so as I'm flying around, what's happening is the ships sort of fly by wire.
You're never going to let those fans go, are you?
Because obviously trying to figure all that out in space, because to actually go, okay, I got to put a force on this part of my rigid body, and I have to put a force over here on this part of the rigid body. I mean, that's just too much for any player to do, and it'd be too much for a human being to do. It's why an F-35 has a fly-by-wire system, because there's no way a real human pilot could actually fly it, because it's dynamically unstable. So the computer's like moving all the control surfaces all the time, and it's basically taking the input of the pilot, saying, okay, well, he wants to pitch, he wants to roll, he wants to go here. And so that the philosophy of that is very much in this. And so what happens is your ship's computer, when I say I want to pitch, I tell, okay, I want to pitch, and the sort of flight computer goes, okay, that means I need to put a force here and put a force here, and it actually talks to all the thrusters on the ship. So this particular one has eight maneuvering jets, 4 on the top, right, and there's 4 on the bottom down here. And so it basically polls them. It says, okay, I need a force over here, I need a force here, and which one of you can get there, and how quickly will it take you, and how much force can you give me? And then all the thrusters.
I think he talks about how many polys or moving parts this ship has later on. It's pretty interesting.
All right,
he already talked about
polys.
Did he? 7 million?
And what's really cool about that is that in the old school of making
I wonder how that compares to now.
Freelancer style game, you basically said, okay, this ship would roll at 30 degrees a second, or this would pitch.
Some might say this ship looks like crap right now.
This system, there's not
comparatively, this is
years ago, like what your roll of pitches. It's all based on
a 678, you said?
what thrusters are, you know, kind of how quickly they can articulate, how much stuff they can deliver.
I don't think they look
so
like
what's really
crap.
cool about that is
I'm
that
newer,
what it
so
means
I
is
haven't
when you're, say,
seen
in
a lot. I don't think they look like
a
crap,
combat
but they
situation,
just
and you
don't
actually
hold
get,
a
you know, you
candle
get hit
to the
on
more
your
modern
front
ones
top
by
right
a long
thruster,
shot.
or you get
Not by a
hit
long
on your,
shot.
you know, back bottom thruster or something, it will have a completely different effect
It's
on
lacking
your
ray
flight
tracing.
envelope. So they'll, you know, it's a level of fidelity that hasn't been done before. And the other thing
Just
that's
the
really cool
graphics
about
are
that
so much
is
better
that
now.
it really plays
I
well
walked through
into
Loreville the other day, and I
the bigger sort of
saw
Star
the
Citizen universe where
reflection
you're sort
of a
building and
neon
modifying your ship,
sign in a
because
puddle.
it means that you can
Isn't
have
that
like
cool?
huge
Yeah.
amount of
Okay, like,
capabilities
that's
in how you're building
insane.
and customizing your ship. And it also means that there's no particular strong, you know, definite.
And then in
this is
some
how we're
passages
gonna
you can walk by a mirror, not
build,
even
because,
see
for instance,
your
give you
own
an example,
reflection.
you could build a
But,
tank
hey,
with a
it's
spaceship,
powerful.
Oh, yeah.
lots of armor, lots of shields, and heavy weapons.
Yeah.
Costs you a bunch of money to build that, but someone who's a good pilot may have built a much lighter build that's really maneuverable.
I'm waiting
And
to
yeah,
see what
if
it's
you
gonna
manage,
look like
if you
when
hit this
they
guy, then he'll probably
get
blow up.
the,
But it's going to be pretty
plants
difficult to hit him. If
moving.
he's a good pilot, maybe he can get 20 hits
For
on
the
you before
immersion,
you
they're
get
gonna
one hit on him, and
put
he takes you
bones
out.
in the
So there's a
spines
very
of all the
strong
plants so that
yeah,
you
they
can
showed
move
that this
through
week.
them.
If you
Yeah,
add weight to your
I'm
ship, it's
waiting
going to affect your
for that to be a
sort of
part. That's gonna be
performance.
That's pretty
So
cool.
even just,
Yeah.
you know, in this situation, if you
That probably
you know,
will
once
be
you
in the next
fire
patch.
a lot of your
just would
weapons or
seem like.
your missiles, you'll be slightly lighter.
I'm not saying,
And we're also
not saying
you
next
spoke
patch. I'm not
into
sure
it, so
about
you don't have to
3.9,
do
but
it, but if
definitely
you
want
want
Right,
to,
I'm like,
you
not
can
3.9.
adjust
Right.
sort of your power ratio.
And I think we're
or
starting to
something, so,
see
you
a
know,
little bit of that
you could be in a
staggered
tight,
development start
turning
to pay off
dogfight,
now
and you
because
decide,
they're
okay,
getting
I'm
these
gonna take a
sprint
risk and drop
reports
some power to
where
my shield
the next
to put a
crew
bit
is
more
working
power to
on the
my thrusters
features
to maybe
for
try and get an
the
extra degree or so
next
in that
patch,
turning
so you're
battle.
able to
So
bring
I
some
just
stuff
think
in.
because
And
it's system, it's
I
built
think it's
as a
starting to smooth
system,
out a little bit.
it's a lot, it's a lot more sort of flexible, and also has a lot more combinations. So in terms of an open persistent universe, or even in terms of playing the more Wing Commander style game, I think it's going to open up a whole range of strategies and combat in space, right? So I think that's great, and that's something that, you know, obviously you can do with today's tech that you couldn't have done, you know, when I was making the last games I was making, just because it's pretty processor intensive. But you know, now you've got the horsepower to do it. So let's see. I think just for fun, where's my carrier gone? I'm going to bring a few enemy ships in. But this part's the sort of very final bit, so the full combat stuff's not all the HUD and everything isn't fully in, but I thought it'd be fun to sort of see all the ships attacking the carrier, much like you saw in the sort of cinematic sequence, which was obviously a lot of this, but staged with nice, taking the best shots for it. Okay.
The audio hasn't changed that much.
So it's the same
That's
like
pretty.
level of detail on the
That's
you know, the
gorgeous.
big carriers that you have. The same thing. I mean, you know, the carrier actually has got, you know, I think this particular carrier has 115 turrets on it, and of course they all move, they all articulate. I think there's 4 different types. There's the AA gun. There's a sort of a bigger sort of heavy duty ship-to-ship one, and then there's the equivalent of a Flannex sort of point defense system, and there's a missile turret. But again, like I'm saying, I mean, this is, if you saw this cinematic sequence, this is pretty.
Griff, can you raise the volume on the
and
screen,
everything
please? Having someone having trouble hearing
See
it.
if I can get. Fortunately, this is the bit where the HUD. Daisy. My HUD. Yeah, I'm gonna get killed.
Be careful,
somewhere if I
Chris.
go around
Jeez.
that. The full HUD targeting stuff isn't actually integrated in
Like
yet,
Miss
so,
Hart.
it's kind of hard for me.
You mean those rocks with no collision?
Yeah.
I don't think he wanted to collide with anything.
In Miss Hart's stream, she has a command with that word in it. But she loves those rocks, man.
He's
Wow.
going faster than me. That's not fair.
Looking at the speed of even those laser bolts now compared to now. Sounds are pretty weak on the Top Gun.
All right. Well, I was hoping to blow one up for you, but
Top Gun, really? No,
I think they've all kind of run away. We've got about 15 minutes left, and so
I'm not gonna lie, it really is going pew pew pew.
Was,
actually going pew pew.
Yeah.
Take some questions.
I would be surprised if
just before I was going to do that,
had
I
Chris
was going to
Roberts
talk
like
to you
actually
about
in the
kind
sound
of why
recording
I'm sort of showing what I'm showing now at this stage, because I'm actually showing you a
You had to
build
do everything
maybe
himself back in the day. I mean,
a
you
year
just had to do
before you typically would do so. So, you know, in the old-fashioned sort of
now you have a
typical
whole sound engineering
publisher model, you
team.
would
Like,
basically
wasn't that
spend another year working on this, and then you would go to E3,
ISCs
and
ago?
you'd do
There
a
was like
reveal,
12 guys working on how
and then, you know, you'd sort of have your last
the
year,
rock
you'd
sounded.
lead up to releasing it.
You FPS might like.
But part of you know, part of what I'm trying to do here is one, I'm coming back to make a game. I really I'm very focused on making it about PC. You know, I feel like the games that I made in the past were obviously you know, at the heart they were always PC games. I felt like, you know, one of the things that Wing Commander and the other games I made was all about sort of pushing what you could do on the PC and sort of showing sort of the aspiration and the dream of it all. And I sort of felt like over the last few years, especially as a player, I kind of feel like as a PC gamer, I'm kind of, you know, underserved. I can either play ports of a console game. So, I mean, I have a console. If a game was built for console, I buy the console version. I don't buy the PC port of it because I'm getting a port of something that was built for 7-year-old tech. So I don't feel like people are really pushing the PC like they could. I think there's a lot of, I guess they're coming back to attack me. A lot of PC gamers that sort of feel like they would like to get, that's my guess anyway, that they would like to get something that really kind of shows off or pushes the hardware. And there I died and got killed by the nasty enemies. But so you know, I put this together in a way that I can make it sort of outside the traditional publisher system, because you know, most of you know, the big publishers aren't very interested in building a PC-specific game, and they're also not particularly that interested in building something that's a sort of space.
They're not interested in waiting 10 years.
You know, it's a genre that hasn't been, you know, big for the last 10 years.
8 years, so, maybe.
Yeah, not that I'm complaining. I'm just saying they want to churn stuff out like yesterday. They ain't trying to wait on nothing.
It's just that there hasn't really been anything.
They got people to
compelling recently,
boards
so that's kind of what my goal is, to sort of come back and say, hey, I'm going to do a PC game like the old Wing Commanders I did, which was, if you've got a great PC, this is really going to show it off, and you're not going to be able to get this experience.
It is amazing to think the development on back then with Wing Commander was a year and a half. You know,
game and everything else. So as part of that, I've put
you
together
might get your wish,
a
Bond.
group of private investors, but as part of my deal with that is to validate that people want this kind of game, don't mind it.
But I mean, think about it though, like when you move from
free-to-play or
like
a social game,
what you just saw in the demo to
an element of
firing up the game
in
now.
addition to
I mean, that's what, 8 years time.
Obviously, this is a much bigger budget than you
put
would
another
have
2 on it. I mean, where could it really be? Put another
game. But the
5 on it.
concept
Like,
is that we're going to have a sort of limited number of
it's going to be good.
I feel like a good part
people
of
that
it
really
is
like
that
this.
Hold on a second, Gigi. Hold on, Gigi.
Be part of the process much earlier than you would normally be. So you would, you in essence come in and sort of pre-buy your spaceship, and then you're part of you're getting a lot more. You're basically involved in the development process in terms of seeing what's actually going on and really being informed. Which I think, if you've looked at the Roberts Space Industries site, it's we definitely do that, and we're going to be doing more of that going forward. But you're also going to be playing the game and builds much sooner than you would do if you're not doing this. So the full timeline to get the full big persistent universe and everything out is about 2 years. But about 1 year into it, we're going to have sort of the multiplayer build, the alpha multiplayer build that you'll get to play, and then
2 years.
About another 18 months in, there'll be sort of the alpha beta of the persistent universe that you'll get to play if you're part of this early community that's sort of signing up early and saying, hey, you know what, I believe in space games, I believe in PC games, and I'd like to be part of this. And so I'm kind of...
Okay, Gigi, go ahead. We were just trying to hear that part when he announces how long it would take.
2 years. years.
In the old
Yeah,
days,
2
this would be
years.
my green light meeting with, you know, at EA or Microsoft or somewhere.
Those words would come back
Say,
later
"This
and
is what I'm
haunt
working
him.
on, and this is
And
what I want to
haunt
finish."
him real hard.
So,
Yeah.
The
8
community,
years later.
yeah, the community reminded him in 2014. They
That's kind of
reminded
what
him, and they
happens.
reminded him again in
Publishers say, okay,
2016.
Yeah, that looks cool. We think we can sell X million copies, and
in
so
December
we'll
2015, he
we'll
was
back
on
you.
the video game.
And all a publisher really is doing
and
is
he said,
it's
had a trailer that said
basically saying, I think there's
2016.
people that will like this and want to pay for it. So that's kind of what.
Yeah,
I'm doing here,
Luciana,
but
you're
I'm
right.
doing it
If only.
for you guys, because I mean, at the end of the day,
Well, I
you're
was
the
gonna
ones
say
that would
that,
be playing it and want to play
you
it.
were
And
talking about
I'm hoping that a lot of
PC
you
gaming versus
have
console gaming, and it's still true today. You can
want to be in this
build
universe
it,
because I do,
you know,
and I
even
kind of want to play this game.
a mid-level,
So,
maybe
so
like
I'm
$1,000
saying,
PC game that
if
really
you
outclass
if this is something you're excited by, then
console
please
out there.
come to robertspaceindustries.com and participate and support us. So that's my pitch. I'm not very good at the pitch side of things, but we have about 10 minutes left, and I thought that it would be good to do
And
Q&A.
earlier on, they
for,
were hoping, a lot of people were hoping that
if
he
anyone
would
has
change
some
his mind
questions,
and port
I'd be
the
happy to
game
answer
to
them.
our
So
console.
turn over to the.
Yeah, I think it comes up as one of the questions here he takes, I think.
Talk like someone in publishing.
So the maneuvering thrusters, can they be intentionally disabled to do like some of the Starbucks style maneuvers and like Battlestar?
Yeah. So I mean, you know, all the different pieces are separate components on the ship, and so they can all be, they're all simulated and they're all damaged and all the rest of stuff. But you can also, it's kind of what I was saying. There's a baseline of it'll fly for you, but you'll be able to sort of switch off some parts. So, for instance, you could like disable them, so you could sort of go on a sort of slide, and then you could turn them back in, and then your ship would take over. So, the idea is there will be lots of moves and strategies in terms of how you dogfight. Because I kind of wanted, it's actually one of the big challenges of a space game is how you, in a multiplayer fashion, add enough like detail and nuance to actually make it sort of challenging in terms of different strategies to it.
And the flight model is still under construction.
That's kind of why I'm excited about that, and you're definitely going to be able to do that.
I mean, it's good, but it's still, it's not there completely.
Y'all remember when hover mode first came out?
Don't say that
word.
word.
Make sure I've got this
Hover
right.
mode.
It
Hover
almost
mode was
sounds
the
like you're
bane of
taking
my
a hybrid
existence.
approach for the end game between
Doing
Eve
several of this.
online, where you've got economy driving things,
I blew up
and then
so many
a
ships
more
in hover mode.
traditional MMORPG like, say, World of Warcraft or Guild Wars, where you get to a certain point and then you kind of have access to more story points. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, I'd say so. I mean, I think there's a combination where there's an attempt to try and do stuff on a procedural manner that I couldn't do to the level. So I think you can sort of simulate systems, and if you simulate them really well, they're kind of cool. In the old days, it was pretty primitive in how you'd simulate them, so it wasn't that interesting. Now you can do some stuff, I even think, on the NPC and AI side that could actually be pretty interesting. But yeah, it's kind of a hybrid. So the idea is that you have the big universe that's has a lot of sort of procedural elements to it, and then you're sort of spicing it up here and there with sort of narrative bits that you're dropping in, and it's sort of, I think it's a good combination for me. It's the sort of game I want because it sort of allows you to have the big open world, but then also sort of feels like it's got a bit of a personal touch, which is, for me, that's always important. I sort of feel like you have to be connected to the world to really sort of get lost in it.
Okay, so then to expand on that, I have a coworker who I respect his opinions about MMORPGs very much, and he played BioWare's Star Wars game, and he opined that its major downfall was that once you got to the end game, there really was no content, and they blew through the content, getting to that end game much quicker than BioWare anticipated. So you feel like this dynamic micro update system will kind of alleviate that?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean,
Only the millennials do that. Did I say that?
The old Republic issue is that, I mean, essentially it's an incredibly well executed single player game that millions of people can play. And that in terms of updating content is
but the question asked was correct. We blew through the content so fast.
It's great content, but I mean, it requires a huge amount of work. So I think you're much better served in being smart about how you set your, like in the case of this, how you set your
feel like
galaxy
it's
up, how
okay
you put
to
different
be
factions
determined
together,
to
and you sort
finish
of
the
put
game and like have that
systems
as
in
the
place
goal.
that, I
But
mean, I'll
then
give
you
you an
need to
example.
go back
But,
and actually
so for
play
instance,
the game. I feel like a lot of people beat the game, but then
it's
they
not
don't
just about having an
play it
economy. So we're sort of
ever and
simulating.
actually
The idea is to
honestly
simulate the
engage
galaxy
the
like
game.
like a real world would be.
Some
So,
that's
people
a
for
like
way
instance, if you're
of
trading
buying
close
a
to
game.
Earth and the planets near there, they're
some people like me
right
just
near
have a
the
lot
sort
of time.
center
We
of the
just beat
empire,
it
and there's a
with
lot
a
of
week or so.
law and order and sort of military presence.
Not even trying
so
hard.
there isn't really an opportunity for other
Well,
players
we
to
can't all be fast
basically do PvP or take out new players. But
It
if
was
you're trading
definitely
there, it's very safe
in
as you
Gold
mentioned. When
Republic
you
where I got
land,
my
say
nickname,
on
the
Earth,
Grinding Beast,
you'll
'cause
be
I
paying
grinded
landing
so
tariffs,
quickly
and you'll be
and
paying
often.
tariffs on the goods
I
you sell.
had all the
because
money in the game.
someone has to pay for the infrastructure. Someone has to pay for the law and order that's happening there. Now, of course, if you don't want to do that, there's other areas of the galaxy that don't have the same level of law and order, that don't have any of that. But of course, obviously, they're a lot more risky because those are the areas that, pirates aren't really, there's no one keeping the pirates in check and everything else. So it's much like, the idea is to sort of simulate this universe like a real world. So there's trades and, there's pluses and minuses to everything. And I think then when you start to do that and you put those tools in a world, then, and you enable the player base to almost sort of help keep it alive and create content, I think that you sort of can avoid the problems that you have with sort of the old Republic. And to be honest with you, I mean, this is a Privateer Wing Commander style, so it's not about getting to level 80 or anything. I mean, there is no idea of level 80 in this style of game. There is basically, you earn money, you upgrade your ship, which is sort of equivalent of your character, and then you can later on buy, say you can get an asteroid.
Oh my God, old gamer, give it a rest. You got to be kidding.
It's not about, okay, I need a rush to get myself to an
oh, that's
level 80
too funny.
Then what my end game
Old gamer is
it's a different sort of philosophy, and I think
oh my God,
he's a funny guy.
He's creating
jokester.
divisions and rifts between the players and factions in
watching
such
this
a
on
way
YouTube,
that they all sort of operate amongst each other, which is what, the thing that EVE Online does. That's kind of how they keep that universe going.
I have a technical question about the network traffic that a game like this might generate. In a game like World of Warcraft, you don't have to share that much data between client and server. It's basically like, where's your character and what is he doing right now? But here, you mentioned that capital ship has like 100 turrets, and something like that would have to be disseminated to every client. Have you run into any technical problems
thank you for following.
freely
Appreciate that.
Issues like that?
Well, no, actually, I mean, it's funny you mentioned that because I would actually argue with you that the setup of this style of game is much easier to do than a World of Warcraft, because in a World of Warcraft, you have whatever it is, 1,000, 2,000 people in your shard, and you've got to worry about all those people being in the same area. So yes, the fidelity of simulating any individual person isn't necessarily as high as something as this, but you've got a lot of them. So this is the way you should think about this on a multiplayer technical side. It's a lot closer to, say, Battlefield 3 or World of Tanks. And the actual, the stuff, the combat that you saw here in the multiplayer system, you can't be in a what we call a battle instance with 1,000 players. So it's going to be like a freelancer or a Battlefield where it's somewhere between, say, 60 and 100 and something players. But of course, space is big, right? So in the actual galactic sort of server level, all the player bases in it. You're not on different worlds or shards. It's just that if you're flying out in space between planet A and planet B, and the galactic server basically goes, okay, well, you're flying from planet A to planet B, and this other person's flying from this planet to this planet. They've intersected, and they're going to be in conflict. So it creates an instance in space, and of course, space is huge. It's infinite. So there's no way in this system that you say, I'm going to go to exactly this coordinate. So basically, it creates these battle instances, and they exist for as long as the conflict exists, and then it's gone. So just sort of think of the persistent galaxy being more like a really smart matchmaking system built on top of what would happen in World of Tanks and Battlefield, that's sort of keeping track of your overall status, what your location is, what the money you have, and all the rest of the stuff. But the sort of high fidelity, like data traffic for the combat stuff, is sort of in those sort of temporary battle instances. That's much more like a sort of, like I said, World of Tanks field.
How do you think it's going to be like near Earth, where it's going to be a very busy system, I would think, as far as handling these high poly art assets, or at least what's very high poly compared to what we see now? When you are playing multiplayer and there's, say, 60 or so characters all interacting in that particular area where it's not creating that instance, that's persistent in your persistent world.
Okay, well, so I mean, here's the other. See I'm
that guy
some
went deep.
tricks away
Persistent in your
on
persistent
space side.
world.
But there's a big advantage to making this kind of game over making a typical, say, first-person or third-person game, is that you don't really have to, the environment's pretty cheap, right? It's space. So you spend, your processing power, your GPU power on the spaceship or the character, and then the size of the spaceships means that by the time you get in close enough to the 300,000 polys of the fighter you're in or the craft that you're in, it's pretty much filling the screen. So you're not going to be able to have 60 other ones all at that level of resolution all on the screen at once. So what would happen is, yeah, you can have 60 people in there, but if you were close enough on one to have that level of resolution, the other ones are all being rendered at a much, much, much lower level of resolution. And that's sort of the advantage of these big objects, right? So it's different than if we were saying it was a first-person shooter game and we were having, 100 or 200 characters running around shooting each other all at 100,000 polys. Yeah, there would be a problem because you literally could get a lot of these characters all on the screen at once at that resolution, and it would be harder to push that data around. But because you're flying spaceships and spaceships have sort of size and volume, it's you can't really fit that many of them on screen at once. So you sort of alleviate the technical issue of having too many polys at one when everyone comes together in the same spot, because there's just so many ships you can fit in a certain volume. That's kind of the way it works.
So you are one of the very few high-profile figures in the video games industry that has started in the video game industry, went to the movie industry as a producer, and now coming back. What would you say is the key thing that you and RSI are bringing to this project that other developers and publishers would say, we have the movie industry experience, and we're bringing the cinematic experience to you in this game? What would you say, that you're bringing sets you apart from those claims?
Well, I think, I sort of hit on it a little earlier. I think the thing that I learned the most when I was, spent about 10 years making movies is that there's an attention to detail, and by the way, it's not on things that you would think are obvious at all. So if you're not really, you're not making movies, you're not sort of into it, you sort of view the sort of high-level stuff, the obvious stuff, but there's a huge amount of work that goes in on, a whole bunch of really talented and creative people to put the tiny little nuances and details in, and it is actually those details,
like the toilet, the shower head,
feel more realized, and so then the actor's performance or whatever can live inside it. And I think that,
which I love, by the way, I do love it.
I feel that
I need it on the origin ships.
Some of that attention,
dude, I'm telling you, I love it.
That you would use in film.
I zoom in and look at all that stuff.
Stepping up another level.
I always go in the bathroom. They're so nice. So
all I want to do is I want to play this game, and I don't even want to feel like I'm playing a game. I just want to feel like I'm lost in this world. And so for me, it's probably the detail. And then from a sort of more boring production process basis, there are some. There are aspects of the film
Chody was ready
that are
for
silly,
this.
and there are
Chody
also
knew
aspects
about
of
this
film business
before
that
you
are
even
pretty good. And they're very, very good at marshalling a large amount of people in a short period of time to achieve one unified creative
all the
vision.
extreme couponers are sitting
That's
back and
actually
laughing
quite
at
impressive
all
when
the
you're
rest of
on
us.
a movie set and you see 200 or 300 people all operating in unison to deliver a combined vision, and they sort of do it in a very, or even if you think about visual effects in a movie, most of those big visual effects movies,
old gamer in these days, you need a bidet, man.
And they deliver them, they finish shooting and they've got 6 months or 8 months to do all the shots, and that's a huge challenge. In the game business, you do similar work, but you'll take 2 or 3 years to do the same level of volume, and a lot of times it's not to the same level of detail. So I think on that side, there's some good sort of techniques to sort of adapt and use. I fully think that the game business is going to be the sort of entertainment medium of the 21st century. We're just at the beginning of our industry. So if you look at a film that was made in the 20s, it's very primitive compared to films that are made today. Because they sort of evolved from theater, so they're very static and the performance is very big. And then, as you got closer to the 70s, it became more naturalistic. And I think that the game business is just like that. I think we're still figuring out how to engage and how to immerse a player in a world or a universe. And that's kind of part of the fun of it, is to figure out the syntax and language is cool. I think I've got the time is up. Please wrap up on the front here. Oh, apparently our site is having millions of hits and is overloaded. So everyone out there, please be patient.
This is the infamous server crash.
Hopefully, I think it's worth it.
Website.
But it's great that so many people are interested in it. But we'll try and get.
You have to
back
wonder
up,
whether or not that was a marketing move, you know?
Yes, we can. So.
No, but it would have been smart if it was.
Fine. Yeah. Okay.
Because people would have been like, "Oh shoot, let me get on."
This was the first recorded instance of 30Ks in the verse.
That's funny.
I see you, Scar. I see you, buddy.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was. Let's go to Gigi first, because she's the new person to Star Citizen. After kind of finally getting to watch all this with Chris, what are your thoughts from what you saw? What did you take away from it in comparison to what you see now, I guess?
If you're talking, but I don't hear you.
Oh, I'm not. I'm sorry. How about now? Hopefully you guys hear me now. Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying let's throw it to Gigi since she's the newest player. Maybe Gigi, try to give us your feedback after watching this from 2012 and then now what you've seen in the game. Is there anything that stood out to you?
Well, a lot. One, clearly the graphics, like, oh my gosh. I'll get a lot of the sound effects were different. The star placement and the way things look is a lot different. The ships look so rudimentary. Not that they look bad, but just nothing compared to what they look now. I'm interested in seeing what happens in the next 2 to 3 years, because from where came with that to now has been such a drastic change, and he has so much more at his fingertips now. He's got so much more money and help and just like resources to do more quicker. And then, like Tenth said earlier, with the staggered production is just probably going to be even more helpful, because then they're going to be able to like roll this stuff out sooner rather than later, hopefully.
Okay. That's definitely spoken from a fairly new player, because all us old coots would never say we want to wait 3 or 4 more years. So you have the luxury of making that statement. Tenth, let me jump to you, Tenth. What stood out to you?
Yeah, I think what stood out to me was it was cool. I was saying this in pre-show. It was cool to see the progression of the game, because I hadn't before this week watched this 2012 announcement video, Star Citizen. I only got introduced to it 2 years later, just through, I think someone was telling me about it. I never kind of went back, just started where I started and kept moving on. And so so it was good to see it's like in its more primitive state to where it is now, and to still hear that there's more stuff they want to put in. I think during the presentation we were talking about feature creep and what kinds of stuff. We're always talking about those guys who we've supported since near the beginning, or even at the beginning. We've always talked about how what the balance is between what we can, like, what's critical to deliver right now and what could be introduced in a patch later on, right? Like, what are the essentials versus what are the kind of the icing on the cake? And I say it on Channel 27 a lot. CIG is on a quest to deliver perfection, right? And it's going to mean balancing out what is good enough to move on and what is something you need to deliver that's part of the foundation for you to put this game in the hands of backers such as the 2012 group that's been waiting 8 years for it. So it's cool to see that some of the stuff that Chris was talking about with Persistent Universe and immersion and the idea behind the game still stands. So the creep hasn't been too drastic, but I think a lot of the features and what he wants to do with the game and see that immersion word is huge, right? Because you can call it immersive in 2012, but I mean, it's also immersive in 2020, and we have a ton of more things. So I think it's just trying to figure out where that balance is. But by and large, it's great to see the progression, and I'm hoping I want to. We say it on the show before, but I'm going to say and hope that at CitizenCon 20 this year, CitizenCon 2020, that we get an announcement for Squadron 42, we're opening it up for beta.
All right,
so
that's your prediction.
I don't know, or alpha or whatever you want to call it. Like,
you're gonna put
a date attached to it.
You're gonna put a ship down. You're gonna put a ship down. You're gonna put a ship down for that prophecy.
For the announcement of the beta date.
Yeah, I'm looking for an announcement, like, because you know that if we get some that alpha beta area, that the end is nigh. Because once Squadron 42 is developed and put out, the Persistent Universe is going to fall behind. Like, it's going to just fall right into place. A lot of the ships and assets that are being developed for that game just thrown into the verse. So I don't think we have that much longer, but I would love to see that at CitizenCon this year.
Okay, fair. fastcart, what about you?
I'm so excited for CitizenCon. It's going to be my first one.
Cool.
Nice. Yeah,
fastcart, how about you?
Yeah, I was trying to stop myself from saying drink every time TenthSigma said emerging. So that's what started twinkling in my eye. That's what that was. He said it 3 times. Like, man, you're going to give people alcohol poisoning and keep on going.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
No, but what in my mindset when I was watching this before and now, I just wanted to pay attention to what changed or what stayed the same. During the presentation of what his ideas were, and a lot of it has not changed, and I'm kind of surprised that he obviously didn't know how much money they were going to make, so his I mean the expansion of his ideas grew as you got more money, but I mean most of the stuff is pretty much still in there, so I'm kind of impressed with that. Talk about feature creep. They did introduce the funding goals on the website that went up to 65 million, and after that they stopped because the feature creep was becoming more of a concern. So
yeah, I agree with you, fastcart. That was probably my big thing, was to see how much the plan had changed, and I felt that the bulk of what Chris had in the vision was laid out. There were some things that we've seen or haven't heard much about since, like I mentioned earlier, about the being able to play on your own private server. But I think those things are also not that important to people right now. So I was impressed with the fact that there was a good skeleton there, and we've seen the meat get thrown on the bones over the past few years. I always joke around when people complain about the release of Star Citizen or Squadron, and I basically say, if you didn't buy in 2012, don't say anything to me. And the reason why I say that is because the people in 2012 were sold on Squadron 42. That was the promise, and there was a time frame that said within a couple of years we'll have it. Other people who came in years later, by the time what some people call feature creep or the additional things that were added came on board, they didn't realize all the history that had happened with this. People don't realize Chris started. What was the initial amount he wanted? Was it $2, $3, $6 million? What was the original amount they wanted to raise?
I think they wanted $6 million, but he would have been happy with $2 million.
Right. I mean, that was the original numbers, and he was still talking about Squadron 42. So to be where we are now, approaching 300 million in the sense of funders, backers who are giving him money. Of course, there's more money than that. 5 studios or 6 studios around the world, all this stuff. There's a lot that has changed within that time frame. And if we go back and look at other AAA games and look at what their development times were, I'm talking about start to finish, starting with a new engine, everything. These games go anywhere from 7 to 10, 11 years. So people think that for some reason, I think sometimes it's because so many games are being churned out every 2 years, 3 years, some of the more popular games, because they're using COD, they're using the same engine, just kind of revamping and doing things, and people thought that that's the way games come out. They didn't realize that there takes a lot of time and development for these games to come. So I was truly impressed by that. 10th, my prophecy to you is we're going to hear about beta before CitizenCon. And let me tell you why. Now, mind you, the global thing may throw this off in a big way. Before the global thing happened, I kept feeling that maybe Gamescom would be some type of teaser to the industry, and that when CitizenCon came, that's when we would hear about a first quarter, second quarter release in 2021. That's kind of what I was thinking. But now with this global thing happening, we don't even know if Gamescom's going to happen. There's a whole lot of things that could change. You guys know that the conventions for EVE was canceled. The convention for Elite Dangerous was canceled. A lot of these things are being shut down now because of what's happening globally. So, hopefully, thankfully, since CitizenCon's in October, hopefully by then things have toned down and changed. I know fastcart is booked. GG is booked. I'm booked. Are you booked yet, 10th, or are you still thinking?
I haven't booked yet. I'm holding off a little.
Okay. Pelvic, thank you for joining. Following, thank you. All right, 10th, you got to be there, brother. You got to be there.
No, look. I want to be there, man. I'm only in Northern California.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So this is a drive for you. Cool.
Oh, so you're right there one way or the other.
Oh, okay.
I just skate down the road.
If you don't show up, we're coming to your house. I'm telling you that now.
I get it.
Okay.
we might show up because some of us haven't booked yet, and we want to save money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys don't mind two knucklehead kids, then you'll be all right.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, and Ops Chief, that's a good point. CitCon can still be virtual, so it doesn't mean that we won't find out about things. Push come to shove, at the very least, that could happen. But I'm hoping for most people who go to CitCon, as much as we enjoy the presentation, I would have to say at least 50%, if not more, is about meeting community. And we really would look forward to seeing a lot of you guys there if you're able to come out to LA this year for CitCon. Go ahead, fastcart.
Before you continue, I just want to say, if you are coming to CitCon, I hope you do come to CitCon. Make sure you get your real ID license before.
Yes. Explain that, fastcart, real quick.
Basically, on October 1st, you'll only be able to use your federal or real ID to travel on airlines or airplanes. You can still use the state ID for whatever you want, but you need the real ID in order to board an airplane. So if you show up to the airport without a real ID, they'll just turn you away. So you don't want that to happen just before CitizenCon.
Real ID is the cheaper way to go. If you've got a passport, you can do that, but no domestic travel now without the real ID or U.S. passport. So like fastcart said, you don't want to get disappointed and get there and they say you can't get on the plane. So thanks, fastcart, for reminding everybody of that. Let's throw in one last piece. We're going to be doing a show in a couple weeks on 3.9, the first Sunday in April. And we all know that right now Ivacati has got 3.9 and they're working on it. Let me ask each one of you, is there anything in particular you're looking forward to in 3.9? I know the Prowler's coming out, the prison system, there's a lot of things coming out. Anything you guys want to toss in? You're not looking forward to nothing, fastcart? Really?
Yeah, not really.
No 30,000 errors?
No, see, my big thing, the merchantman. So that's not in 3.9.
Okay.
That's my next.
That's where your heart is the brand new merchantman?
And I might play some of the Theaters of War just to see if I can handle that. But that's not in 3.9 either. So.
Okay. That's good. Gigi, what about you? Anything in particular that stands out you're interested in?
I actually am looking forward to the prison system, which I know sounds crazy, but I like things that make the game feel real, like the immersion that Sigma kept bringing up.
Immersion.
It means a lot for me, because specifically for me, when I'm playing games, I get bored real fast.
Mm-hmm.
So I need you to engage my mind and be constantly forcing me to do more things and look at more things and interact with more things, because that's how I stay a part of the game. Otherwise, I'll end up texting or doing whatever while I'm playing because I've gotten bored. So I'm really looking forward to this idea that you will go to prison and have to work your way out of prison.
Wait a minute. I got a question. Will there be a women's prison or will it be combined?
Ooh, will there? I think it'll be combined probably because they're making everybody wear the same suit.
Oh, that's going to be interesting. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I'm saying you got four black people here. We don't want to be stereotypical. Don't be going to prison just to get your rep or anything like that.
All right, 10th, what about you? Anything in particular in 3.9?
I don't know how we skipped this, guys, but the interior of New Babbage, the landing zone.
Ooh, okay.
That's gonna be that's the piece. That's the piece for me. I want to see what's going on there, man. I think I was looking at some screenshots that may have been, floating around the community, and it looks looks like it might be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have the roadmap in front of me, so I didn't know. I forgot what was coming.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a big one.
I'll log in for that.
Okay.
Well, I will say, like Scarlett just said, if I do go to prison, it has to be a white-collar crime prison, federal.
All right, I'm going to set the chat box off right now. I'm looking forward to food. That's right, food and drink. I'm looking forward to food and drink. And you could possibly die if you don't eat after several hours. No, I'm just kidding. No, I like you, Tenth. I've seen some of the pictures that have been floating around, and it is interesting to see that people are interacting. And I know there's been a lot of concern about the whole food thing, but I think CIG, we can trust them enough that whatever they put out, they're going to listen to the community. They're going to tweak it. But somebody made a point. I want to say it was one of the guys. Who was it? Someone made a statement talking about food and said, there's no meaning if you get stranded somewhere on a planet or a moon and there's no risk of you dying from starvation. And I thought about that in the sense of the game, you know, the urgency of what it means if you don't happen to have certain supplies, whether they be medical supplies, food, whatever. If there's this idea that says, well, I'm just going to stay alive no matter what, you know, no matter what the circumstances are, it does shift a bit. And I know for some people, because people are so used to talking about survival games, you know, they think about Rust, or they think about 7 Days to Die, or Conan, and they automatically think there's going to be this, you're just foraging every 3 minutes and stuffing your stomach. I don't think that's going to be a factor. I think that there's going to be, it kind of freaks me out that, you know, we've been running around both Hurston and RCorp, and you can't run 10 feet in RCorp without running into a hot dog stand or a pizza stand or a burger stand. So I don't know why people thought that those were all just decorations, you know, or something. I don't know. It was obvious that they've had that in mind, but that those foods are accessible. I think the crucial thing, and you guys can give me feedback on this, is going to be when they introduce personal inventory at the point where you can only carry so much stuff. That's what's going to be interesting to me. And maybe one of you guys will create a food delivery service. That's another thing in the game.
Uber Eats
Hey,
and reverse.
you'll
Now
be
that's
happy.
something I would do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to come to my resident, and I'll be fully stocked. In my bazaar, I would definitely have a food cart.
You'll be ready, huh? So we can stop there and load up with you, get some crates.
I got to depart with fastcart on that. It's going to be the privateer, buddy. It's I considered the merchant. Now it's here. I took a different road, but yes, I want to stay stocked.
Okay.
And the 890 has an industrial-sized kitchen, Griff. So
yeah, I mean, think about some of these ships that actually do have kitchens on them. You know, now, guys, you don't know the joke, but Tenth and I are big luxury fans. So whether it's a 600, a Phoenix, a 890, you know, that's just normal for us. So you know, that's how we roll. But
it's life.
True enough. I mean, many of the ships, not to say even freelancers, they all have these food stations. You can get them in the 300 series where you can get the coffee maker and the food processor. So, like it or not, guys, it's coming. It's coming, but I truly believe they're not going to make it. And they've said this. They don't want it to be burdensome on the players. They want to keep it fun. So I don't think we have to worry about that.
Waiting in those lines at those restaurants will be fun.
Yeah, I mean, they are creating a social dynamic. I mean, not to be funny, but I know even now, if that was a mechanic that we had to worry about, I'm sure when you're in Quantum or when you're meeting up with friends, you would stop at a place and grab food there and eat before going out, especially if it's where it buffs you. For those of you who used to play Star Wars Galaxies, you all know before you went out and did anything, man, you might have spent 30 minutes buffing, just getting ready to go fight. And they're just talking about 2 bites or 3 bites of something, and you keep rolling. You know, so this doesn't bother me at all when it comes down to something like consuming food or drink. But again,
I mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tenth. Well, I was just going to say that you got to think about it in terms of. I'm also thinking about it in terms of like cargo. Like if you land at an RR or a land and you're hauling cargo and you have it offloaded and you're trying to pick up another load, that's supposed to take time there. So what would you realistically do? Go hang out in the food court, you know, and catch up on the news, you know, whatever you want to do, you have that space to do it. So that area is there to facilitate all these kinds of transactions that are taking place. So I'm interested in that mechanic making its way into the game. But I don't think it's going to be, like you were saying, Griff, to the extent that we've seen in other games. You know, I think it's going to fit right how it needs to.
Were you going to say something, fast card?
I don't know how it's going to be to the extent. I'm hoping that, if it's 3 days without going with the food, does that count with when you logged off, or you have to be logged in the whole time for the time to stop and start? But yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed about the. I mean, I was not expecting that much of a survival in the game, so I'm slightly disappointed in that, but I'll deal with it when it's fully implemented. But I was going to say, like, for quantum travel, having a food processor in your ship is probably going to be key, because you may not have time to do whatever you want to do before you leave or when you reach your destination. So something like the 300 series had their food processor. I'm hoping they introduce that to more ships as time goes by.
Very good point. Gladestone, that's a great idea. And Vaughn, you said that the Carrack has an armory, which is true. Holds 8 rifles, if I'm not mistaken. But hate to tell you this, brother, a 890 holds 32 rifles. Get with luxury, my friend. Get with luxury, my friend.
Griff, if you make me roll my eyes any harder, they're going to fall out of my head.
What's the point with 890? Why is everybody so mad at Origin?
Now, Vaughn says he's got some info here. He said CIG said about 4 hours between meals, and that's not bad. One time during a gameplay, probably on average for most people, is not bad at all. Yes, Ops, and I am a snob. Don't get me started. Yeah. So yeah.
We all know.
Yeah.
How Griff feels about lunch.
And you already got started.
Yeah, and I don't want to belabor the food point, but someone did say something that I want to get you guys feedback on about food. They talked about when you're the captain of a ship, we always have these cargo spaces, and people think about cargo in the sense of what they're going to go pick up and drop off to trade or do sales with. But when you've got a crew, will you as a captain be responsible for making sure, particularly on a ship like the Carrack, something that's very long range, or a reclaimer, would you be responsible to making sure that the place is stocked with food, with water? Will you have to take up some of your cargo spacing to make sure, and even if it's for NPCs, I don't think they'll go to that level with NPCs, but I'm sure for other players, you'd want to make sure you had something just in case somebody didn't have what they needed. What do you guys think?
Oh, I'm totally with it. I think that that as you think about the multi-crew aspect, that you can even that's a very real possibility, and you could even as you kind of play this thing out, you could even have somebody who's responsible for that kind of sourcing, or whoever on your crew, who as a captain you kind of are delegating these responsibilities out, and I don't know if it would be a gameplay element that would require like a whole career focus, but certainly be something that somebody would have to take care of before you take off from somewhere, and somebody has to be responsible for it. So I would see that, the food piece being part of the cargo a ship can carry, but I could see some pushback on that as well.
Lysiana's dropping some knowledge here. She says supposedly, if you hire NPCs, you must feed them and make sure that they have adequate accommodations. I do know that there is this aspect of them responding to how well they're treated, and I guess even feeding them would fall into that category, whether they're happy or not. So that goes another Mr. Economics over there, 10th. That's something that people will have to factor into their budgets when they're going out with a multi-crew. And I've heard a lot of people who say, oh, I'm going to load up my ship with a bunch of NPCs, and I don't think they realize what that means on a financial level, to be able to hire not only NPCs, but hopefully the best NPCs, which means that you got to pay for it.
I would say, especially for our Origin lovers and our luxury lovers, y'all no, but for real, you're gonna want to hire like a small crew to be in polishing your silver and dust mopping the wood floors. So for real, you're gonna want like a steward and a cook and all that, because you're gonna go down to wherever and be in the galley and eat food and all that good stuff. Well, you're too,
Gigi, let me inform you. We don't deal with NPCs. We hire the common people to work on our ships. So it will be real players. It will be real players.
Real players are going to log in to work on your 890. Seriously.
If you want to, do you want to make a living in the verse? I'm just asking.
The gall.
Hey, how is the accommodation? Someone will take them up for it.
Oh yeah, you pay them the right way.
People got to get paid. People got to eat.
Please, Clayhammer, bring me my drink. Please, Clayhammer, my drink over here. Yeah, I think somebody will do that. You pay them the right amount of money. I think it'll work. Yeah, that's good stuff.
What I was gonna say is that for NPC is like if you for Griffin she want to hire the best one, she could probably find like a good chef like Steven Seagal who's multi-talented. He can fight and cook.
No, but that's a good point because people have talked about NPCs and I've talked about what are the benefits when you hire them. Some ships, obviously, I'm going to pick a ship off the top of my head, like a Retaliator, where you're hiring somebody to just strictly be a gunner. But will NPCs have the ability to, I don't know how this would happen, but whether they would, if there's an engineering problem, can you call that NPC from there and have them respond to something in engineering? Or does it mean that once they're locked into that as a blade, that's what they do? And that requires humans. Because my thing is, I need people that are flexible. Not to be funny, but fastcart's point is well made. You want your cook to also be somebody that if somebody's boarding your ship, they know how to run to the armory and get guns, right? I mean, that's what you want. Because you can't have everybody that's specialized. And I get a feeling that NPCs are going to be a little bit more specialized. I'm not sure if you're going to have that level of flexibility. Vaughn, thanks for following, Vaughn. Go ahead, fastcart.
I was going to say, like, maybe you'll have different levels of NPC. Like, sometimes the low levels will have, like, one specialty, but as you pay more and more money, NPCs with multiple specialties.
Yeah, that's what Ops is saying. Supposedly they will have their own skills and needs. So, that kind of gets to your point, fastcart. Like,
yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm hoping for, but, we don't know.
Gladestone says that's why he wants his own server. Well, buddy, you got to have a lot of money for that server that's going to host this game. I can tell you that because you'll be playing by yourself. If you're going to host 50 people, you got to have a pretty good server, or more for that matter. Yeah, I don't think that the server thing's going to happen anytime soon. I hate to break your heart because the tech on that is a whole nother thing. What were you saying, Gigi? Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Well, listen, we are going to wrap it up. We really appreciate everybody who came and sat in with us tonight on a Sunday night. Thank you to all of the Soul Citizens who are on board, fastcart, Gigi, Tenth, and all of you who came in. I want to give a shout out to Aliciana. Aliciana knows why. I'm so happy to see her here. Those of you guys who know Aliciana, she was one of the early YouTubers who put out a lot of lore and a lot of information about Star Citizen and Squadron 42, and we're really happy to see her. And hopefully we will get her on the show one day. Zenonica, thank you for following. We really appreciate that. Guys, look for us next week. Kimmy's going to be on. He's going to be doing a whole lore and theory crafting piece next Sunday at 7 Central Time. Those of you who are into the whole egghead theory crafting where you just want to go on a roll and imagine and design and help Chris Roberts build this game, be here next week with Kimmy to support him. And then we'll be back on the first Sunday of April to talk about 3.9 because we're really projecting that by then it should be, hopefully if it's not to the entire community, we're hoping that it's at least at first wave with subscribers and concierge and we can share some stuff with you guys. So again, we really appreciate you guys being here. Let's see who we can raid. I don't know who's on right now. Let's see who we got here. Our good friend Captain Richard. Like he really needs some people, but I'm sure all these people here love Captain Richard. So we're going to say goodbye. And thanks guys for coming. And we're going to send you guys to Captain Richard.
Take care.